A millionaire hires a poor woman to clean his pool in the summer. One day he comes home early and catches a scene that leaves him shocked. Get ready for a journey full of nostalgia and incredible twists. Today's story is truly remarkable, with an ending that's sure to touch your heart and leave you amazed. So, stay with me until the very last moment. I hope this experience is unforgettable for you, and may God bless you and your family. Now, let's get started. Summer 1983. Los Angeles, California. Michael Harrison stared at his reflection in the bathroom mirror of his Bel Air mansion, adjusting his silk tie with practiced precision. At 35, he had everything money could buy, except peace of mind. The sprawling estate around him felt emptier with each passing day, despite its marble floors and crystal chandeliers. His perfectly manicured lawn and Olympic-sized swimming pool were constant reminders of the lifestyle he'd built from nothing. The pool, especially, had become his latest source of frustration. 3 pool cleaners in the past month had quit, claiming the job was too demanding or the schedule too rigid. Michael's exactitude when it came to maintenance had earned him a reputation among local service companies. The doorbell chimed through the house's intercom system. His housekeeper, Mrs. Chen, announced the arrival of another potential pool cleaner. Michael checked his Rolex, 7:58 a.m. At least this one was punctual. He descended the curved staircase, his Italian leather shoes clicking against the marble steps. Through the tall windows, he caught a glimpse of a woman standing at his door. She looked different from the usual pool service workers. No company uniform, just worn jeans and a faded blue t-shirt. Opening the door, Michael found himself face to face with Patricia Collins. She was younger than he expected, probably in her late 20s, with sun-streaked brown hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. Her face was free of makeup, tanned from outdoor work, and her green eyes met his with unwavering determination. "Mr. Harrison, I'm Patricia Collins. I'm here about the pool cleaning position." Her voice carried a slight southern accent, suggesting she wasn't a California native. Michael studied her carefully. "You're not from an agency?" "No, sir, I work independently. I learned pool maintenance working at the YMCA in Georgia, and I've been cleaning private pools for 2 years now." She handed him a wrinkled piece of paper, a list of references. He skimmed the names and numbers, noting they were all from smaller neighborhoods. "This is a rather large property, Ms. Collins. The pool requires daily maintenance, strict chemical balance monitoring, and impeccable attention to detail." Patricia nodded. "I understand, Mr. Harrison. I'm thorough in my work, and I'm not afraid of high standards." Something in her direct manner intrigued him. She wasn't polished like his usual employees, but there was an earnestness in her expression that made him pause. "The pay is $15 per hour," he said, watching for her reaction. It was well above the going rate for pool maintenance in 1983. Patricia's eyes widened slightly, but she maintained her composure. "When would you like me to start?" "Now, if you're available. I'll show you the equipment and my expectations." Michael led her through the house, aware of her attempting to maintain a professional demeanor while taking in the opulent surroundings. The pool area was his pride and joy, 25 meters of sparkling blue water, surrounded by natural stone decking and carefully maintained tropical plants. The pool house contained top-of-the-line cleaning equipment and chemicals. "Everything must be pristine," Michael explained, walking her through his exacting requirements. "The pH levels need to be checked twice daily. The water temperature must be maintained at exactly 82 degrees. Any leaves or debris should be removed immediately. I swim every evening at 6. Patricia listened intently, asking relevant questions about the filtering system and chemical storage. Her knowledge seemed solid, even if her appearance was less than polished. "Why did you leave Georgia?" Michael found himself asking, surprising himself with the personal question. Patricia hesitated, then squared her shoulders. Fresh start. California seemed like a good place for new beginnings. There was clearly more to the story, but Michael didn't press. "Very well, Mrs. Collins, you can start today. Mrs. Chen will show you where to store your supplies." As he watched her examine the pool equipment with careful attention, Michael couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just hired someone who would either be his best pool cleaner or his biggest mistake. Over the next few weeks, Patricia proved herself more capable than Michael had anticipated. She arrived promptly at 8 a.m. each morning, worked efficiently, and maintained the pool to his exacting standards. She never complained about the heat, the heavy equipment, or his frequent inspections. Michael often watched her work from his home office window. There was something compelling about her methodical approach, the way she took pride in even the smallest tasks. She was different from his usual employees, no artificial smiles or practiced deference. Patricia simply did her job and did it well. One morning, he noticed her limping slightly as she worked. "Is everything all right, Mrs. Collins?" he called from the patio. "Yes, sir, just a long walk this morning." She straightened up, clearly trying to hide her discomfort. "You walk here." The nearest residential area where she might afford to live was at least 3 miles away. "My car's in the shop," she explained, turning back to her work. Her tone made it clear she didn't want to discuss it further. That evening, Michael made some calls. His mechanic owed him a favor, and it wouldn't hurt to have his pool cleaner arrive fresh instead of exhausted from a long walk. The next morning, Patricia arrived to find Michael waiting by the pool house. "My mechanic has an opening today," he said, holding out a business card. "Tell Tony I sent you, he'll give you a fair price." Patricia stared at the card, then back at him. "Thank you, Mr. Harrison, but I can't accept that. I don't take charity." "It's not charity, Mrs. Collins. It's practical business. I need you here on time and ready to work. Tony's the best mechanic in Los Angeles. I trust him with all my vehicles." She took the card reluctantly. "I'll pay full price." "As you wish." Michael turned to leave, then paused. "The car. What model is it?" 1975, Ford Pinto, she said, a hint of defensiveness in her tone. Michael managed to hide his wince. Those cars were notorious for their problems. "Tony specializes in American cars. He'll treat you fairly." As summer progressed, Michael found himself looking forward to his brief morning interactions with Patricia. She never tried to engage him in unnecessary conversation, but when they did speak, her responses were thoughtful and direct. She had an understated intelligence that surprised him. He learned small details about her life through these conversations. She lived alone, sent money to her mother in Georgia, and worked a second job waiting tables at night. She never complained about her circumstances or tried to leverage his wealth for advantages. One particularly hot afternoon in July, Michael came home early from a business meeting. As he walked through his house, he heard splashing from the pool area. Assuming Patricia was cleaning the deep end, he stepped onto the patio. The sight that greeted him stopped him in his tracks. Patricia was in his pool, but she wasn't cleaning it. She was swimming, gracefully, powerfully, cutting through the water with perfect form. Her clothes lay neatly folded on a pool chair, and she was wearing nothing but her underwear. Michael stood frozen, knowing he should announce his presence, but momentarily transfixed by the scene. There was something both vulnerable and strong about her as she glided through the water, unaware of his presence. Her swimming form was impeccable. Clearly, she'd had training beyond just pool maintenance. Then she reached the pool's edge and looked up. Their eyes met. Time seemed to stop as they stared at each other, both equally shocked. Patricia's face drained of color, and Michael quickly turned away. "I'll give you a moment," he said stiffly, retreating inside. His mind raced. He should be angry. This was completely inappropriate behavior for an employee. He should fire her immediately. And yet, 10 minutes later, Patricia knocked on his office door. She was fully dressed, her wet hair pulled back, her expression resolute despite her obvious embarrassment. "Mr. Harrison, I apologize for my completely unprofessional behavior. I understand if you want me to leave immediately." Her voice was steady, but her hands were clenched at her sides. Michael turned from his window to face her. "How long have you been swimming in my pool, Miss Collins?" "That was the first time," she answered immediately. "I shouldn't have done it. The heat and seeing the water every day." She stopped herself. "There's no excuse. I'll gather my things." "You're an excellent swimmer," Michael said, surprising them both. "Where did you learn?" Patricia blinked, clearly thrown by the question. "I was on scholarship at University of Georgia, swimming team, before I had to drop out." Another piece of her puzzle fell into place. Michael considered her for a long moment. "The pool is off limits during working hours, Ms. Collins, however." He paused, watching her brace for the dismissal. "If you'd like to swim after your work is done, you may. Proper swimwear required, of course." Patricia stared at him, disbelief written across her face. "Mr. Harrison, 6 o'clock is my swim time. The pool is free after 7. Consider it a job benefit." He turned back to his window, effectively dismissing her. "I'll see you tomorrow morning, Miss Collins." He heard her quiet "thank you" before she left, and allowed himself a small smile. Sometimes the biggest mistakes turned out to be anything but. That evening, as Michael swam his usual laps, he found himself thinking about Patricia's perfect form in the water and wondering what other surprises his unconventional pool cleaner might be hiding. The summer heatwave intensified as July stretched into August. Patricia continued her daily routine at the Harrison mansion, arriving precisely at 8 a.m. each morning, now in a restored Ford Pinto that purred like a much newer car. Tony, true to Michael's word, had worked miracles with the engine. After the swimming incident, something had shifted in the dynamic between employer and employee. Michael found himself noticing small details about Patricia that he'd overlooked before. How she hummed quietly while checking the pool's chemical levels, the way she seemed to know every bird that visited his garden, her habit of carrying a worn paperback in her back pocket. One morning, he spotted her during her usual routine, paused by the pool's edge, completely absorbed in her book during her break. "What are you reading?" he asked, causing her to start slightly. Patricia showed him the cover, The Great Gatsby. The book was clearly well loved, its pages dog-eared and spine cracked. "Required reading in high school," Michael commented, remembering his own encounters with Fitzgerald. "Fourth time reading it," Patricia admitted. "Something about Gatsby's dream keeps pulling me back, though lately I'm finding myself more sympathetic to Nick." Michael raised an eyebrow. "The observer on the outside of wealth, the one trying to understand both worlds," she corrected, then quickly added, "Break's over. I should get back to work." That evening, Michael found himself in his library, pulling out his own copy of The Great Gatsby. He hadn't touched it since his boarding school days. Now reading it again, he found himself wondering which character Patricia saw him as. The next day, dark clouds gathered over Los Angeles, unusual for August. Patricia worked quickly, securing the pool equipment before the storm hit. As thunder rumbled overhead, Michael watched her hurrying to finish her tasks. "Miss Collins," he called from the patio door. "You should come inside until this passes." Patricia hesitated, then jogged over as the first heavy drops began to fall. She stood awkwardly in his vast kitchen, trying not to drip on the imported tiles. "Mrs. Chen, bring Miss Collins a towel, please," Michael instructed his housekeeper, who appeared with crisp white linens almost immediately. "The weather report says this storm will last for hours," Michael said, watching Patricia dry her hair. "So would you like some coffee?" Before she could answer, a brilliant flash of lightning illuminated the kitchen, followed by an immediate crack of thunder. The lights flickered once, twice, then died completely. "Perfect," Michael muttered. "Mrs. Chen, where are the emergency lights?" "In the pantry, Mr. Harrison," came the reply from somewhere in the darkness. They heard Mrs. Chen's careful footsteps, then the beam of a powerful flashlight cut through the gloom. Soon the kitchen was lit by several battery-powered lanterns, creating pools of warm light in the darkness. "I should go," Patricia said, but Michael shook his head. "In this weather, that wouldn't be safe. Besides, your car is electric start, isn't it? The power's out all over the neighborhood. You won't be able to open the garage door." Patricia looked out the window at the torrential rain, then back at Michael. "I don't want to impose." "It's not an imposition. Mrs. Chen makes excellent coffee, and I have questions about Gatsby." Something in his tone made Patricia smile despite herself. As Mrs. Chen busied herself preparing coffee on the gas stove, Michael and Patricia sat at the kitchen island, the storm raging outside creating an oddly intimate atmosphere. "So, the University of Georgia," Michael said, watching her wrap her hands around the warm coffee mug. "What were you studying?" Patricia was quiet for a moment. "Marine biology. I wanted to work with conservation programs, maybe at one of the big aquariums." Her voice carried a hint of old dreams. "What happened?" "Life." She took a sip of coffee. Mom got sick my junior year. Medical bills piled up. Had to drop out to work. She shrugged. Story as old as time. And California? Needed a complete change. Georgia held too many. She paused, choosing her words carefully. Expectations. Los Angeles seemed like a place where nobody expects anything from anybody. Michael thought about his own circles in Los Angeles, where expectations were everything. You'd be surprised. A comfortable silence fell between them, broken only by the sound of rain and distant thunder. Mrs. Chen had discreetly disappeared, leaving them alone in the lantern-lit kitchen. "Your turn," Patricia said suddenly. "How does someone like you end up—" She gestured vaguely at the mansion around them. "Someone like me." Michael raised an eyebrow. "Someone who notices when their pool cleaner limps, who remembers what books they read in high school, who offers shelter from storms." Michael studied his coffee cup. "Would you believe I started as a pool cleaner?" Patricia's surprise was evident. "Really?" He nodded. "Summer job in high school. My father believed in building character through manual labor. I saved everything I earned and invested in tech stocks. Got lucky with some early Apple investments. Built from there." "That's why you're so particular about the pool," Patricia realized. "I know exactly how much work it takes to keep a pool this size pristine. It's why I appreciate good work when I see it." He met her eyes directly. Patricia looked away first, a slight flush coloring her cheeks. "The power's probably not coming back soon, is it?" "Welcome to my impromptu dinner party," Michael smiled. "Mrs. Chen makes an excellent storm night pasta on the gas stove, unless you have somewhere else to be." Patricia thought about her small apartment, dark and empty. "No," she said softly. "Nowhere else to be." Mrs. Chen reappeared as if summoned, already beginning to gather ingredients. The kitchen filled with the smell of garlic and herbs as she worked, the lantern light casting dancing shadows on the walls. As they ate pasta at the kitchen island, Michael found himself sharing stories about his early days in business, the risks he'd taken, the failures he'd overcome. Patricia, in turn, told him about growing up in a small Georgia town, about swimming in quarries and dreaming of oceans. The storm raged on outside, but in the kitchen time seemed to slow down. They were no longer employer and employee, just two people sharing stories in the darkness. Finally, around 9 o'clock, the lights flickered back to life. The spell of the storm-darkened kitchen broke, reality rushing back in. "I should go," Patricia said, standing quickly. "Thank you for dinner, and for letting me wait out the storm." "Of course," Michael replied, suddenly formal again. "Drive safely, Miss Collins." At the door, Patricia turned back. "The answer to your question from earlier about Gatsby, I don't see you as any of those characters, Mr. Harrison." "No?" She shook her head. "You're writing your own story." Before he could respond, she was gone, running through the light rain to her car. Michael watched until her taillights disappeared down his long driveway, then turned back to his now too-quiet house. That night, lying in bed, Michael realized he'd never felt more comfortable in his own kitchen than he had sitting in the dark, eating pasta with his pool cleaner. The thought should have troubled him more than it did. Meanwhile, in her small apartment across town, Patricia Collins stared at her ceiling, unable to sleep. On her nightstand, The Great Gatsby lay open, its pages still holding the warmth of a conversation she'd never expected to have. Both of them knew something had changed in those hours of darkness and storm. Neither was quite ready to admit what that might mean. The morning after the storm brought with it a peculiar awkwardness. Patricia arrived at her usual time, determinedly focused on her tasks. Michael found himself lingering over his morning coffee on the patio, watching her methodically test the pool's chemical balance. "The storm knocked some debris into the pool," she reported professionally. "Oh, it'll take a bit longer to clean today." "Take whatever time you need," Michael replied, both of them pretending the previous night's conversation hadn't happened. But as August wore on, small changes became apparent. Michael started leaving books on the poolhouse shelf, classics he thought she might enjoy. Patricia began arriving with 2 cups of coffee from the local diner, leaving one on the patio table without comment. They never discussed these unspoken gestures. One particularly hot morning, Michael was preparing for an important business meeting when he heard voices by the pool. Looking out his office window, he saw Patricia talking to a well-dressed woman he recognized immediately, Margaret Wheeler, his neighbor and one of Los Angeles' most notorious socialites. "Really, Michael," Margaret called out, spotting him at the window. "You must come down here and explain yourself." Sighing, Michael headed to the pool area. Margaret stood in her tennis whites, designer sunglasses perched on her perfectly coiffed hair. Patricia was gripping her pool net like a shield. "Margaret, what brings you by?" Michael asked, noting Patricia's tense posture. "I came to invite you to my end-of-summer gala next weekend, but I've just had the most fascinating conversation with your employee." Margaret's tone dripped with barely concealed disdain. "Miss Collins maintains my pool," Michael said firmly. "Yes, so she said. But did you know she was a championship swimmer? Apparently she competed at the state level in Georgia. Simply fascinating." Margaret's smile didn't reach her eyes. "I was just suggesting that perhaps she'd like to provide entertainment at my party. Synchronized swimming is all the rage this season." Patricia's knuckles were white around the pool net. "As I explained, Mrs. Wheeler, I'm not a performer. I'm a pool maintenance professional." "Margaret," Michael interrupted, his voice cold. "Mrs. Collins is an employee, not entertainment. Now, about your gala." He smoothly led Margaret away from the pool area, accepting the invitation with practiced politeness and ushering her off his property. When he returned, Patricia was aggressively skimming leaves that weren't there. "Ms. Collins, I should have kept my mouth shut," she said tightly. "I apologize if I embarrassed you." "Embarrassed me?" Michael was genuinely surprised. Margaret Wheeler embarrassed herself. She's always been more money than class. Patricia's skimming slowed. "She's your neighbor." "Unfortunately, look, what Margaret said was completely inappropriate. You don't owe anyone your story or your talents." Finally, Patricia stopped pretending to clean. "In Georgia, I used to compete against girls like her daughters. Their pools were just as big as this one, but somehow they felt smaller." She took a deep breath. "Thank you for understanding." Michael watched her resume her work, her movements still tense. An idea formed in his mind. "Do you miss competing?" "Sometimes," she admitted. "The discipline of it, the feeling of being completely in control in the water. But that was another life." "The Beverly Hills Athletic Club has an Olympic-sized pool. They're always looking for instructors." He held up a hand as she started to protest. "It's not charity, Miss Collins. It's a business recommendation. You have skills they need." Patricia stared at him for a long moment. "I'll think about it." That evening, after Patricia had left, Michael found himself by the pool, watching the sunset reflect on the water. He thought about Patricia's face when Margaret had reduced her achievements to party entertainment. Something protective stirred in his chest, a feeling he wasn't ready to examine too closely. The next morning, Patricia arrived with news. "I called the athletic club," she said without preamble. "They're offering me evening coaching hours, 3 times a week." "That's excellent," Michael said, genuinely pleased. "I'll adjust my schedule here, of course. Make sure everything's still maintained to your standards." "I trust you to manage it," Michael found himself saying. The smile she gave him in response made his morning coffee taste better somehow. As the days passed, Michael noticed subtle changes in Patricia. She stood straighter, smiled more easily. Sometimes she arrived in the morning still damp from early practice at the club. Her enthusiasm for teaching evident in the way she talked about her students. One morning, Michael came down to find Patricia deep in conversation with Mrs. Chen. Both women quickly fell silent when they saw him. "Is everything all right?" he asked, noting their odd expressions. "Yes, Mr. Harrison," Mrs. Chen answered quickly. "Miss Collins was just helping me understand the pool maintenance schedule for next month." Later that day, he overheard Mrs. Chen on the phone, speaking rapidly in Mandarin. He caught Patricia's name and something about the young master, Mrs. Chen's nickname for him since he'd hired her years ago. When she saw him, she hung up quickly. Something was going on with his staff, but Michael couldn't quite put his finger on what. He found himself watching Patricia more closely, noticing how she seemed preoccupied, often lost in thought when she thought no one was looking. The mystery was solved one evening when Michael came home early and found an unfamiliar car in his driveway. As he approached the pool area, he heard voices, Patricia and a man's, their tone heated. "You can't just show up here," Patricia was saying. "This is my workplace." "Come on, Patty," the male voice drawled, heavy with a Georgian accent. "Your mama's worried sick. Everyone back home is talking about how you just ran off." Michael stepped into view, making his presence known. Patricia's face paled when she saw him. Next to her stood a tall man in his early 30s, wearing an expensive but ill-fitting suit. "Mr. Harrison," Patricia said quickly, "I'm so sorry. This is James Mitchell. He's from Georgia." "Your fiancé," James corrected with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Or did you forget that part when you ran away, Patty?" Michael felt like he'd been punched in the gut. He looked at Patricia, who was staring at the ground, her face a mask of complicated emotions. "Miss Collins," Michael said carefully, "if you need to take some personal time." "No," she said firmly, finally looking up. "James was just leaving. Weren't you, James?" James's smile turned cold. "We'll talk later, Patty. Good to meet you, Mr. Harrison. Real nice place you got here." The threat in his voice was subtle but clear. After James left, Patricia stood rigid by the pool, her hands clenched at her sides. "I suppose you want an explanation," she said quietly. Michael moved to stand beside her, both of them looking out over the water. "Only if you want to give one." "James Mitchell," she said, his name like it tasted bitter. "High school sweetheart, family money from peach orchards, pillar of the community. The perfect match according to everyone in town." She laughed without humor. "When Mom got sick, his family offered to pay all the medical bills. The price was just my whole life." "The engagement," Michael concluded. Patricia nodded. "I agreed at first. Seemed like a fair trade for Mom's life. But James, he changed. Or maybe he was always that way and I just didn't see it. He wanted me to quit swimming, stay home, be the perfect society wife. When Mom started getting better, I realized I couldn't do it. So one night I packed a bag and just drove west." "Does your mother know where you are?" "She knows I'm safe. I send money every month. She understands, even if she doesn't agree." Patricia turned to face Michael. "I'll understand if you want to terminate my employment. This is complicated." Michael thought about James's barely veiled threats, about Patricia's determination to build a new life, about the way she looked when she taught children to swim at the athletic club. "Do you want to leave?" he asked simply. Patricia looked surprised by the question. "No," she said softly. "I don't." "Then stay." "But Miss Collins—" He waited until she met his eyes. "Though next time someone threatens you on my property, call the police." The relief in her smile made him want to find James Mitchell and do something decidedly unbusinesslike to him. Instead, he simply nodded and headed inside, leaving Patricia by the pool she'd made her own. That night, neither of them slept well, both wondering what tomorrow would bring. The week following James's appearance was tense. Michael noticed Patricia constantly scanning her surroundings while she worked, jumping at unexpected sounds. He quietly hired additional security for his property, though he didn't tell her about it. At the Beverly Hills Athletic Club, Patricia's swimming classes had become increasingly popular. Some evenings Michael would drive past the club on his way home, catching glimpses of her through the large windows, confident and graceful as she taught young swimmers. But James's shadow loomed over everything. His expensive car was often seen parked near the club or crawling past Michael's gates. He never approached Patricia directly again, but his presence was a constant threat. One evening, Michael arrived home to find Mrs. Chen waiting for him with an unusually serious expression. "Young master," she said quietly, "Miss Collins had a visitor today while you were gone. The man from Georgia. He was very angry. He said things—" "What kind of things, Mrs. Chen?" "He said she belongs to him, that she has debts to pay." Mrs. Chen wrung her hands. She was very brave, told him to leave, but after, I found her crying in the pool house. Michael's jaw tightened. "Where is she now?" "Teaching at the club." "But young master," he said he would be waiting for her. Without another word, Michael grabbed his car keys and headed for the door. The sun was setting as he pulled into the athletic club's parking lot. He spotted James's car immediately, idling in a dark corner. Patricia emerged from the building, her hair still damp from the pool. She'd taken only a few steps when James got out of his car. "Patty," his voice carried across the lot, "time to stop playing games and come home." Michael stepped out of his car. "Miss Collins," he called. "Need a ride?" James spun around, his face twisting with anger. "Well, if it isn't the millionaire himself, coming to check on your pool girl." Patricia walked quickly to Michael's side. "James, go home." "Not without you, darling. Your mama's medical bills ain't gonna pay themselves, you know." "Actually," Michael said calmly, "they will, because they've already been paid in full." Both Patricia and James stared at him in shock. What are you talking about?" James demanded. "I made some calls," Michael continued. "Seems the hospital was happy to accept payment from someone who didn't require personal collateral." Patricia's eyes filled with tears. "Mr. Harrison, you didn't—" "You can't do that," James sputtered. "The arrangement was with my family." "The arrangement," Michael's voice turned cold, "was predatory and possibly illegal. The hospital's lawyers agreed. So you see, Mr. Ms. Collins doesn't owe you or your family anything." James took a threatening step forward, but at that moment, 2 security guards from the club appeared. "Is everything all right here?" "No," Patricia said firmly. "This man was just leaving for good." James looked between the guards, Michael and Patricia. Finally, he spat on the ground. "You've changed, Patty. You're not the girl I knew." "Thank God for that," she replied. They watched as James got in his car and drove away, tires squealing against the pavement. Patricia turned to Michael, her expression unreadable. "Why did you do that?" she asked softly. "Because no one should have to sell their future to protect someone they love." Michael met her eyes. "The money means nothing to me. Your freedom to choose your own path, that means something." Patricia wrapped her arms around herself, shivering slightly in the evening air. "I'll pay you back, every cent." "No," Michael said simply. "You won't. Consider it a bonus for being the best pool maintenance professional I've ever employed." A laugh bubbled up through Patricia's tears. "That's quite an expensive bonus. Worth every penny." He opened his car door. "Now let me drive you home. It's been a long day." During the drive, Patricia was quiet, processing everything that had happened. Finally, as they pulled up to her apartment building, she spoke. "You know this changes things." "Only if we let it," Michael replied. "See you tomorrow at 8. Patricia smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. 8 o'clock sharp, Mr. Harrison. As he watched her walk safely into her building, Michael realized that despite his words, things had already changed. He just wasn't sure how yet. September arrived, bringing subtle changes to the Los Angeles air. The scorching heat of August gave way to gentler warmth, and the quality of light changed, becoming softer, more golden. The swimming pool's surface reflected the shifting seasons, sparkling with a different kind of brilliance in the early autumn sun. Patricia continued her daily routine at the Harrison mansion, but something had shifted since the night Michael had confronted James. There was an unspoken tension, a heightened awareness whenever they were near each other. They maintained their professional relationship, yet both felt the underlying current of something more. One morning, Patricia arrived to find an envelope on the pool house door. Inside was an invitation to Margaret Wheeler's end-of-summer gala, addressed to Miss Patricia Collins and guest. "Mrs. Chen insisted I invite you," Margaret had written in flowing script. "She was quite persuasive about your contributions to the community." Patricia was staring at the invitation when Michael emerged from the house. "Ah, you found it," he said, trying to sound casual. "Mrs. Chen can be quite forceful when she wants something." "Mr. Harrison, I can't attend this. These people, they're not my world." "They weren't my world either, once," Michael reminded her. "Besides, several of your swimming students' parents will be there. It could be good for business." Patricia traced the embossed lettering with her finger. "I wouldn't know what to wear. Mrs. Chen has a niece who owns a boutique. She's expecting you this afternoon." "You've thought of everything, haven't you?" "I merely mentioned the invitation to Mrs. Chen. She did the rest." Michael smiled. "She's quite invested in your success." The night of the gala arrived, clear and warm. Michael found himself checking his watch repeatedly as he mingled with Los Angeles elite at Margaret's mansion. He was about to get another drink when a murmur went through the crowd. Patricia stood in the doorway, and for a moment Michael forgot to breathe. She wore a deep blue dress that caught the light like water, her hair swept up elegantly. But it was her quiet confidence that truly transformed her. "Mrs. Collins," he said, approaching her. "You look different," she supplied, smoothing her dress nervously. "Exactly yourself," he corrected. Throughout the evening, Patricia surprised everyone, including herself, with her natural grace in navigating the social waters. She spoke passionately about her swimming program when asked, charming parents and potential clients alike. Michael watched with pride as she held her own in conversations about everything from local politics to classical music. "She's quite remarkable." Mrs. Chen appeared at his elbow, looking pleased. "The dress was a good choice, yes?" "You orchestrated this whole thing, didn't you?" Michael asked, suddenly understanding. Mrs. Chen's innocent expression didn't fool him for a second. "I simply help good things grow, young master, like the flowers in your garden." Later, as the party wound down, Michael found Patricia on the terrace, looking at the stars. "Ready to go home?" he asked. "That depends." She turned to face him. "Was this a test? To see if I could fit into your world?" "No," Michael said honestly. "This was an opportunity to show them that my world is better with you in it." The weight of his words hung in the air between them. Patricia took a step closer, close enough that he could smell her perfume, something subtle and fresh like ocean air. "Michael," she said softly, using his first name for the first time. "What are we doing?" Before he could answer, Margaret's voice rang out from inside. "Patricia, darling, you simply must meet the Andersons before they leave." The moment broke. Patricia stepped back, professional mask sliding back into place. "Yes, thank you for the lovely evening, Mr. Harrison." Michael watched her walk away, knowing they'd both felt the shift, the moment when everything could have changed. But the time wasn't right. Not yet. As he drove home that night, Michael realized that his perfectly ordered life had become wonderfully complicated. The woman he'd hired to clean his pool had cleaned away something else instead, the invisible barrier he'd built between himself and real connection. Mrs. Chen was waiting up when he arrived home. "Good evening?" "You're not as subtle as you think you are," he told her with a smile. "Subtlety is overrated," she replied. "Happiness is not." Michael looked out at his pool, remembering the first time he'd caught Patricia swimming there. "No," he agreed. "Happiness is not." October painted the Los Angeles hills in subtle autumn colors, though the days remained warm enough for swimming. Michael found himself spending more time working from home, his office window offering a perfect view of the pool area where Patricia worked. After the gala, their interactions had taken on a new quality, charged with unspoken possibilities, yet still carefully professional. Patricia's swimming program at the athletic club had grown so successful that she'd reduced her pool maintenance schedule to 3 days a week, though she kept the pool in impeccable condition. One morning, Michael came down to find Patricia staring at the pool with an unusually serious expression. "Is something wrong?" he asked. "I've been offered a full-time position at the athletic club," she said quietly, head of their new youth swimming program. Michael felt his heart skip a beat. "That's wonderful news. Congratulations." "I haven't accepted yet." She turned to face him. "I wanted to tell you first." "You should take it," Michael said, though the words felt heavy. "It's a great opportunity." Patricia nodded slowly. "I'd need to give up the pool maintenance job. The hours wouldn't work." "I understand." Michael tried to keep his voice neutral. "When would you start?" "They want me to begin next month." She hesitated. "I'll stay until you find a replacement." "No need," Michael found himself saying. "I can hire an agency." An uncomfortable silence fell between them. Everything they weren't saying seemed to fill the space. "Mr. Harrison," Patricia began, then stopped. "Michael?" "Miss Collins," Mrs. Chen's voice interrupted from the patio. "Phone call for you, the athletic club." Patricia gave Michael an apologetic look before hurrying inside. He watched her go, feeling like something precious was slipping through his fingers. That evening, Michael sat by the pool, remembering every moment since Patricia had first arrived at his door. Mrs. Chen found him there, setting a cup of tea beside him without a word. "She should take the job," he said, more to himself than Mrs. Chen. "Yes," Mrs. Chen agreed, "but that's not what troubles you." Michael looked at his reflection in the pool water. "I'm her employer. It wouldn't be appropriate." "Ah," Mrs. Chen sighed. "You Americans, always making things so complicated. When I met Mr. Chen, he was my employer too. But love doesn't care about job titles." "I never said anything about love," Michael protested. Mrs. Chen gave him a knowing look. "You didn't have to." The next few days passed in a blur of awkward moments and careful distances. Patricia continued her duties efficiently, but the easy companionship they'd developed was strained by the weight of her impending departure. On what was to be her final Friday, Michael came home early to find Patricia swimming laps in his pool. Unlike the first time he'd caught her swimming, she wore a proper swimsuit now. He stood watching her graceful movements, remembering how far they'd come since that summer day. Patricia surfaced at the pool's edge, noticing him. "Sorry," she said, pulling herself out of the water. "Old habits." "Don't apologize," Michael said softly. "The pool will miss you. Just the pool." Her question hung in the air between them. Michael took a step forward. "Patricia, A crash from inside the house interrupted them, followed by Mrs. Chen's exclamation of surprise. Patricia quickly grabbed her towel, the moment broken once again. "I should go," she said. "I need to finish packing up my supplies." "Right," Michael nodded. "Of course." He watched her disappear into the pool house, wondering if he was making the biggest mistake of his life by letting her walk away. Later that night, unable to sleep, Michael went down to the pool. The water was still and perfect, reflecting the stars above. He thought about the first time he'd seen Patricia. Proud and determined despite her worn clothes, he thought about her swimming in secret, teaching children with patience and grace, standing up to James with quiet strength. He thought about all the moments they'd shared by this pool, all the words left unspoken between them. "You're being foolish," Mrs. Chen's voice came from behind him. "Both of you." "It's complicated," Michael said. "Only because you make it so." Mrs. Chen handed him an envelope. "Her new address at the athletic club housing, in case you decide to stop being foolish." Michael took the envelope, feeling its weight in his hands. Tomorrow, Patricia would clean his pool for the last time. Tomorrow, everything would change. The question was, would he let it change for better or worse? Saturday morning dawned clear and crisp. A perfect October day. Michael stood at his office window, watching Patricia arrive for her final pool maintenance visit. She moved through her routine with practiced efficiency, but there was a heaviness to her movements that hadn't been there before. Mrs. Chen bustled around the house with unusual energy, cleaning things that didn't need cleaning, rearranging flowers that were already perfect. Her agitation reflected the tension everyone felt. As the morning progressed, Michael tried to focus on work, but found himself repeatedly drawn to the window. Each time he looked out, he thought about how this would be the last time he'd see Patricia checking the chemical levels, skimming leaves, ensuring everything was perfect. Around noon, Mrs. Chen appeared in his office doorway. "She's finishing up," she said pointedly. "Sometimes the brave thing and the right thing are the same thing, young master." Michael stood up from his desk, decision made. But when he reached the pool area, he found only Patricia's neatly stacked supplies. She was gone. "She left this for you," Mrs. Chen said, appearing with an envelope. Inside, Michael found a handwritten note. "Dear Mr. Harrison, thank you for everything, the job, the trust, the freedom to start over. Your pool will always be my favorite. Sincerely, Patricia Collins." "She just left?" Michael asked, something like panic rising in his chest. "5 minutes ago. If someone were to hurry, they might catch her before she reaches the bus stop." Michael was running before Mrs. Chen finished speaking. He sprinted down his long driveway, past the security gate, toward the main road. In the distance, he saw Patricia walking slowly, carrying her pool maintenance kit. "Patricia," he called out. She turned, surprise clear on her face as he jogged up to her, slightly out of breath. "Mr. Harrison, is something wrong with the pool?" "No," he said, catching his breath. The pool is perfect. It's always perfect when you're taking care of it. Then why? Because I don't want you to go. The words tumbled out before he could stop them. At least not like this, not without telling you. Telling me what? Patricia's voice was barely a whisper. That you've changed everything. The way I see my home, my life, myself. You came to clean my pool, but you've done so much more than that. You've shown me what real strength looks like, what it means to build a life on your own terms. Patricia set down her kit, her eyes never leaving his face. Michael. I know you need to take the job at the athletic club. You should. It's your dream, and you deserve it. But I don't want to lose you from my life. These past months, watching you transform from someone who was running away to someone who's running toward her future, it's been extraordinary. I'm still me, Patricia said softly. Still the pool cleaner from Georgia. No, Michael shook his head. You're the woman who taught me that the best view of my pool isn't from my office window. It's from right here, standing next to you. A tear slipped down Patricia's cheek. I was afraid, she admitted. Afraid that everything would change if I told you how I felt. Afraid it would seem like I was taking advantage of your kindness. Nothing could be further from the truth. Michael took a step closer. You've never taken advantage of anything. You've worked for everything you've achieved. It's one of the things I admire most about you. The morning sun caught in Patricia's hair, turning it to gold. She looked up at him, all pretense of professional distance finally falling away. I don't want to lose you either, she whispered. Michael reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted to. Instead, she stepped closer. His hand cupped her cheek, thumb gently wiping away her tear. Patricia Collins, he said softly, would you have dinner with me? Not as my employee, not as my pool cleaner, but as yourself. Her smile was brighter than any sunrise he'd ever seen reflected in his pool. Yes, she said simply. And there, on the sidewalk of a quiet Los Angeles street, with the morning sun warming their faces, Michael Harrison finally kissed Patricia Collins. It was gentle and sweet, a beginning rather than an ending. When they broke apart, both slightly breathless, Patricia laughed. Mrs. Chen is probably watching from the gate. Probably? Michael grinned. She's definitely watching. She's been plotting this for months. We should go back, Patricia said, but made no move to step away. We should, Michael agreed, taking her hand. After all, you need to teach me how to maintain my own pool. Do I? Well, someone has to keep it in shape while you're busy running the best youth swimming program in Beverly Hills. They walked back toward the mansion hand in hand, both knowing that while one chapter was ending, another was just beginning. Mrs. Chen met them at the gate, beaming with satisfaction. Lunch is ready, she announced, as if she'd known all along how this morning would end. And the pool is perfect for an afternoon swim. Looking at Patricia's radiant smile, Michael couldn't help but agree. Everything was, finally, perfect. Thank you for watching today's story. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up. Share it with your friends and subscribe to the channel to relive the magic of the 80s every day with our heartfelt stories. May God bless you and your family. And don't forget to click on the video popping up on the screen right now. It's another totally rad story you won't want to miss. See you in the next video, and stay awesome.